Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared. My lovely wife, Kara, is at work, and today we are checking out the best hard-use knives, the best overbuilt knives. Let's get into this. First up, this is the Manix 2 XL. Now, the weakest thing on this knife is the plastic cage. That's the one thing holding it back. I wish they would have made this titanium, but they do, however, have aftermarket ones that you can get in just about any material, from brass to titanium. I'm going to eventually get a titanium one and get some titanium scales, and then after that, this thing should be incredibly strong. It's already incredibly strong, and this thing does have a lot of videos of it being tested. Now, it does really good with the shock, you know, like from hitting it from the spine, but it doesn't do good with weight, just weight on it. So the plastic cage winds up failing on it, but it's still a overbuilt hard use knife. I mean, you can do incredible amounts of work with this thing, and it's locked up rock solid. But however, though, if you do hang off of the blade, the cage can eventually fail. I don't know why you do that with your knife, but you know, you can picture things where you're stabbed into something and really pulling down, you know. So that's why I'm definitely going to get the titanium cage. This is made in Golden, Colorado, and it is an S30V, G10 scales, steel liners with the ball. It's got a basically an access lock that has a ball that locks into place on top of a spring, and that's why it makes it, or that's what makes it so incredibly strong. But it's a great slicer, though, and you know, it's not incredibly thick behind the edge, so it's also great for EDC. It is pretty large. You have the jimping all over, and it really locks you in place. The Riat Liang Ma Endeavor. Now, this is it's very plain in a sense to where it's titanium, S35VN, lots of milling, and just a straightforward knife, but it's got a lot of things going for it. It's got a really thick frame lock scales that are just hand filling. I mean, there's nothing really to it. It's a very neutral grip, so you can get a grip no matter what direction you're in, and it makes it easy for ergos. And then this placement right here, they give you a spot to really choke up to the blade, and this grip right here, you really lock in. And it does have some good jipping for you to prevent yourself from sliding up, even though you could just keep your finger back there. But great size, great knife, and it's definitely an overbuilt hard use knife. You can get the reverse flick. It's got great action, internal stop pins, which also helps with the strength. The clip works very good, and yeah, it just it's a straight knife, nice drop point blade. They don't really give you a choil there, so all the sharpening has to go up the blade, but in return you do get that finger choil to get really close up to the blade. But great knife. Next up, the Hogue Rudder RSK MK1. Now, this knife, I'm just going to pull two out here because they kind of go hand in hand, the Griptilian and the Hogue Rudder. I prefer this blade shape over this one, but I prefer these scales over these ones. So I do like the G10, and it is a really strong knife because of the lock. This locking mechanism, the access lock, is an incredibly strong locking mechanism. You'd basically have to break that pin through these steel liners in order to break it. Nice big stop pin. Same thing on this one. And they're just incredibly strong. This is the Benchmade Griptilian with the sheep's foot blade, and this is the Hogue Rudder RSK MK1. Now, they also have this blade shape in the Griptilian, and you can also get this one in G10. So you get this one in 20 CV. Also, this one is 20 CV, but as of right now, since this is the FRN version, this one is S30V. But these are incredible knives. The access lock makes it very easy, especially if you're doing work where you need to get your knife out quick, make your cut, and get it back in your pocket one-handed, and still have incredible strength. Next up, let me just say these are in no particular order. The Rynti snafu. This one is made by the Custom Knife Factory. It is an integral, which also makes it incredibly strong. The stop pins are what also can be thought of as the thumb studs. It works great as a thumb stud, but you see how it locks up there, and then nice frame lock. This thing is rock solid, and it's just one brick of titanium. It is a long knife and has incredibly smooth action. The finger choil is mostly a sharpening choil, but you can get one nub in there and really lock in place. But it's got good neutral grip, which I really like, even though it does have the stair stepping. You can really get a good grip. It's got a great blade shape for slicing and push cuts. With push cuts, if I really want to cover that, I just go right over the top of this, and you can really get some good push cuts. Nice blade geometry, but yet keeps a nice strong spine. So it does have a strong tip, does have a lot of belly, so you can get a lot of great slicing done with this. And yeah, an incredibly strong, well-built knife. The integral being everything made out of one solid piece of titanium for the handle. And when you get that, when it's just one solid piece, you don't have the two pieces or the two scales fighting against each other when there's pressure put on the blade. So that is one thing that makes it incredibly strong. Speaking of integral, let's pull out another one, the Benchmade Anthem. Now, this is an EDC size, but yet it is considered, I would consider it still a hard use knife because of a couple reasons. One, it is an integral. So that right there adds to a lot of strength. You don't, like I said, you don't have to worry about the scales fighting to come apart. And two, it has the access lock, which is an incredibly strong mechanism. Now it locks up from the access lock. There's a bar that goes across here, and this one has an even more reliable spring than most access locks, like this one that has Omega springs. So it helps it with incredible strength. It also locks up right here on the titanium. So it's an incredibly strong locking mechanism, and in a smaller package, in a not so giant package. So you get a lot of strength out of an EDC size knife. Now it's not very thin behind the edge. It's also not very thick, but it does have more of a hard use type of geometry to the blade, even though it is like an EDC size. So you get a lot of strength out of a small package. Also, this knife is in 20 CV and titanium. I forgot to say that. Next up, the Strider SMF and the Strider SNG. So you can see they have the same pattern on their titanium frame lock side. You can see the lock bar stabilizer, which helps the lock bar from over traveling and bending and keeps it in a nice locked up position. They do have G10, or this one has aluminum, sorry. This one has G10 on the one side, and you can see that it does have an external stop pin that locks up on the titanium and the G10. Some people worry about it being locked up on the G10, but these things have been tested and they are incredibly strong and have lasted through a lot of work. And like I said, they've been tested. And also, you know, it locks up against the titanium when it comes to, say, the blade going backwards. Now, the G10 is just going to hold it from being stable from side to side play. So it winds up working really well, especially when you have nice thick titanium like this. This thing is definitely a beast of a knife. And then same thing with this one. It's just a smaller package. This one is a hollow ground blade, and this thing has been used heavily. So it's great to see a knife that's been through the, you know, basically been to battle, you know, and it's holding up very good. This one does have the aluminum on this side, and you can see it also has the back spacer is made out of the same side as the G10 scale or the aluminum scale, the show side scale. So incredibly strong knives, both made in America. And these do get a little bit of lock stick, but I'm working on getting that out. See how it goes. It's not too bad, but it really reassures you that it's going to stay locked up when you know, when it comes time to really put it to hard use. You can really get up close to the blade. You know, you can choke back right here, but this is really the grip that you want. You can get good tip action, good slicing, good push cuts, all with that grip. Incredible knives. Next up, this one is a little bit smaller of a package, and it is also another integral, the Tucson TS195. Now, this one it's more of a smaller knife. It's not a large knife. Let's look at it next to the SMF and the SNG. You can see it's smaller than both if you go all the way back here, but it's still a great EDC size, and for being an EDC knife, it's incredibly well built. Nice thick titanium frame lock, and it is an integral, so it's one solid piece of titanium. You can choke up. It is in M390, and it has this nice Wharncliffe blade shape for precision work. You can get up nice and close to the blade for push cuts, but it locks up right here on the titanium. And you can see, if you look back there, the titanium right here is actually a little thicker. It's mostly for the close, but it's reinforced right there. Now that also is the stop pin when it closes, to stop the blade from smacking against the walls of the titanium. But the action is fantastic, very reliable, and there's a lot of great things to an integral. One, there's little to no hardware, so it's easy to just take out the pivot, take out the blade, and clean it, put it back together. Another thing is it does help it stay nice and centered, because you don't have the scales shifting back and forth. Another thing is it's very strong, because you don't have a bunch of points of contact trying to get away from each other, like when you have two scales. So when you have just one solid piece, you know, it really helps with the strength. It's basically everything is just relied on the lock and the blade. Next up, the Hinder XM24. This thing is a beast. It is a big knife. Let's see if we can get it in frame. Very big knife, amazing knife, great, fantastic ergos. I mean, you really have something to hang on to when you're hanging on to this thing. And then it gives you a nice big finger choil. that you get your whole finger into for the most part. It's a little tight when I go up here, but you know, I usually hold it like this, and then if I do a push cut, I can get away with it. This one does have G10 on one side, but it also has a titanium liner on the inside. So the hardware is extremely big and thick, and this is definitely a hard use knife. It has the lock bar stabilizer you see right there. This one's done in copper. You can see how strong that lockup is. The nice thick lock bar. Now, a lot of people say the lock bar is only as strong as its thinnest point right here, but for titanium, that's incredibly strong, because titanium is as strong as steel, but it's lighter. So, like, well, let me say this. It's stronger than steel pound for pound. So the same amount of titanium versus the same amount of steel, it's going to be stronger. But for the most part, it's basically the same strength, but you get it in a lighter package. That's basically what it is. Same strength with a lighter package. And this way, it is waterproof, it is stain resistant, rust proof. I'm not stain resistant, but rust proof. The action's fantastic, and this is an M390. The stop pins are the thumb studs. Nice strong detent. You see it locking up right there. This is an incredibly strong knife. Now, since we're talking about Hinders, let's bust out the little guy. Here is the little 3-inch. So the XM18 3-inch. These are both tri-way pivots, so this is basically just a tiny version or a small version of this knife. You can see it is definitely smaller, but it gives you all the same features. Everything's basically the same, but or no but, and you can see like even the hardware, how much smaller it is. It does use basically the same kind of hardware, not the same size, but the same kind of hardware, and basically the exact same thing, just in a smaller package. Great little knife. This one's also an M390. Beautiful, beautiful knives. And everything I would say about this, I'd say the same thing, just in a smaller package. So you can get a nice, small, hard use knife out of one of these. The Rynti K2. This knife is, it looks like a katana. That's what it looks like, and I'm sure that's where it was coming from. But nice neutral grip, which I really like. Nice deep hollow ground Japanese tanto. And it's Japanese because up here is rounded instead of straight across. So we do have an American tanto coming up. But nice thin hollow ground, deep hollow grind right here, and then it comes up to a flat grind right here. So for like scraping and prying and stuff like that, nice thick strong blade stock. Beautifully well done knife. You can see the diamonds that are milled out of a CNC machine. You can actually feel them a little bit, gives you a little texture. And I love the stone washed titanium scales. You can see the lines going back and forth. It really does kind of give you the feeling of, I don't know about the feeling, but the look of a katana handle. Nice straightforward ergos. You can get really close to the blade without getting a finger choil. Push cuts. You can use this belly right here for slicing. You can use the secondary edge right there too. And the tip you're not really going to be using, but you can if you really want to. It's mostly going to be used for, you know, penetrating, which it has a nice strong penetrating tip. This is an awesome knife, a beautiful looking knife too. And the action is fantastic action. Next up, the Koenig Arius. This one is the style 57, hence the milling. I did just recently do a review on this, and yeah, in all my reviews I talk about the good and the bad. This thing is an amazing knife, made to high precision. The lock bar is incredibly thick. It is heavily milled out, so it's a lot lighter than it would seem because it is nice and thick. The titanium is really thick, but since it is so milled, it gives you a nice lighter weight package. I think 5.9 ounces. The action is incredible. It does have internal stop pins. And yeah, just super badass. This one's in CTS XHP steel. And you can use the tip on this, but it's mostly belly and for push cuts. So lots of good slicing with this knife. The arrows are fantastic. It really gives you a spot right here to really hang on to in between these two fingers. So you get a great grip on it. Fantastic knife. The Quest Custom Gent. This thing is a beast of a knife. It is more of a precision cutter because it is very thin behind the edge. It has a very deep hollow. It does have carbon fiber inlays, but it does not affect the strength because there are no milling on the inside. So this is solid titanium scales, nice and thick. The action is great. You can't get in there for the middle finger flick, but you can do the thumb flick. Great action. And they call this a Wharncliffe. This is called the Quest Custom Wharncliffe Gent. This is more of a sheep's foot to me. And yeah, you can get the tip, use the tip really good, and you can do some slicing with it and some great push cuts. The ergos are fantastic. Even though it has this hump right here, it has a great neutral grip where you can basically put your hands wherever. Easy access to the lock bar. S35 VN blade steel and titanium. This thing is amazing. Great knife. All right. Last but not least, the the Strider .75 AR. This thing is, it comes in two different blade shapes. So it also has a drop point blade. This one is the Tanto. It is more of an American Tanto because this is nice and straight right here. So it has a nice deep hollow grind right here that gets down to pretty thin behind the edge right here, but then it's nice and thick right here. This is also a hollow, but it's thicker right here, and it helps you to where you can use the tip on this Tanto, the first tip, like a claw almost, and then you can also use the secondary tip for opening stuff up or whatever. You get up nice and close to the blade with this choil right there for push cuts. The jimping is big, sharp jimping for gloves. You can use it still in your hand. The ergos are fantastic. It really helps you get a nice, good grip with these thick titanium scales. You can see how thick these are. This is definitely a very strong lock bar. It is breaking in still. I'm hoping to have it broken in by the time I do the review. And it is breaking in very nicely. Amazing knife. It is heavy. It is thick. There's no milling on the inside. And it's about as good as it gets for a hard use knife. It might be a little much for a lot of people because it is, like I said, it's a heavy duty beast, but I love it. I think it's a fantastic knife. I would prefer the drop point blade shape myself, but this blade shape works really good. I've been carrying it the past couple days, and yeah, it works great. Does have the lock bar stabilizer and a ceramic detent ball. The lock bars on these knives, because Medford made this, so this is a Strider, as you can see, but Medford did make this. So the same person who made this knife made this knife, and you can see a lot of kind of resemblance in the knife. So especially when you unlock it, you can feel that lock bar strength. It's very similar. There you guys go. I love you guys. Peace.